Hey everyone, it's Daniel Elwood and Robert Johnson, The Last Nighters, and The Last Nighters is part of the Launchpad Media, where they're always launching new ideas in your direction. Check it out and all the other shows at thelaunchpadmedia.com. Now, this is going to be episode 60 of The Last Nighters. You can find the show notes and more for this episode on Incredibles 2 at lastnighters.com/60. And before we get into that Google description, let's say hello to my co-host, Robert Johnson. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, everybody. Glad to be back. I'm going to talk about a fun one tonight.
I agree. There's a lot going on in this one. And without further ado, let's get into the old Google. So this came out 2018, science fiction and action movie, 2 hours and 5 minutes, 7.8 on the IMDb, 93% Rotten Tomatoes, 4 out of 5 on Common Sense Media, and 94% of the Google users like it. This was directed by Brad Bird, came out June 15, 2018. Budget of $200 million. And check this out, the box office, 1.243 billion with a B, doll hairs. So pretty successful with this one. So here is the description. Everyone's favorite family of superheroes is back in Incredibles 2. But this time, Helen is in the spotlight, leaving Bob at home with Violet and Dash to navigate the day-to-day heroics of normal life. It's a tough transition for everyone, made tougher by the fact that the family is still unaware of Baby Jack-Jack's emerging superpowers. When a new villain hatches a brilliant and dangerous plot, the family and Frozone must find a way to work together again, which is easier said than done, even when they're all incredible. Increíble. So we got Craig T. Nelson, Holly Hunter, we got Samuel L. Jackson, we got Slippin' Jimmy, Better Call Saul, alumni, and what's that guy's name? He played Hinky in Community.
Playing what character?
He was the government official guy, or their handler.
Oh, Dickers?
Yeah, something like that. It was the guy who he's in Better Call Saul. He was in Breaking Bad.
Oh yeah, when in Breaking Bad when he kills them at the end, he's like the cleaner guy.
Yeah, he's the old badass. You know, the tough ex-cop.
Yeah, it's been so long since I've watched that show, but he was one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, why I can't think of him right now, I have no idea. Anyway, a lot of those folks are in this, and what do you say on that Google description there, Robert?
Well, I'm surprised that it made that much money. I mean, I remember it being popular, and I know that they had built up a whole lot of, clout, or I guess you could say positive vibes from the first Incredibles, which was a fantastic film. And so any kind of sequel would be riding high on the coattails of that. But I don't know, there's a lot of problems with this movie. And there's some good stuff here too, but there's a lot of problems narratively that have been pointed out in some really good reviews that I've seen recently. But, I think I'd rather get into the fun discussions that I want to have in regards to the content of this movie, as opposed to some of the more structural type debates or discussions. Like, I feel like some of those reviews has already been said in terms of how you can make the movie better, how these things don't work and how these things do work. But for you and me, I really want to get into the nature of, we'll talk about it, but the nature of the villain. And there's a couple discussions that the main characters have, which really triggered me in terms of, should we just jump right into it, Daniel?
Now, when you say trigger, you don't mean like get your hate speech off my campus. You mean like triggered something in you or sparked an idea to have a cogent and rational discussion about.
Yeah, whenever I'm watching a movie for enjoyment and then I hear a phrase or they start talking about something interesting or relational to the show in a way, I'm like, ooh, there's something. There's a little nugget that we got to expand on. Because, the characters will say something and it'll kind of be implemented into the plot a little bit, but it's almost like Brad Bird, who wrote the movie and directed it, was kind of trying to make a point in this movie. It really seemed like he was trying to make a couple of claims in this film about the world in general. Did you get that feeling?
Yeah, I would say that he was bringing a lot of almost libertarian ideas to this. Like, what is the nature of law versus morality? Which one trumps the other? What is legitimate? What isn't? What is the nature of society? What is the nature of politicians and politics? I felt a lot of that going into this, and I don't know if that's because that's how I look at everything, and I'm looking for that stuff, or if it's really there.
No, it seemed like Bird was making a few, almost libertarian arguments, especially there are two main points at which I thought he was doing it. Well, three, but the hotel dinner argument.
Oh yeah, very, very heavy.
And
it's illegal. So yeah. Bad. And he's like, what if the law is wrong?
Yeah, it's good. So anyway, let's start at the beginning.
You
And
would.
this movie takes off right at the end of the first movie, although, everybody's, however much older and whatever, and it looks that much better and everything. But of course it's gonna. But anyway, it starts off with the Underminer breaking up out of the earth, and he just wants to rob a bank, which is kind of strange. Like, he's got this giant thing, which is going to attract a lot of attention. And then he's just like using a vacuum sucker to suck out a bunch of cash. And it makes me wonder, what he's doing with the money. Like, does he like, when he's not at the center of the earth, does he like get on Amazon, or does he put it in some other bank, or does he, I don't know, does he come out and like do some shopping?
I would think that with where he resides, he would be running into gold deposits here and there and mining gold and collecting that and being totally rich beyond his imagination in that respect. Why would he go and steal Federal Reserve notes?
Some fiat currency. Yeah, it makes not much sense.
It felt like it was just, we need him to, well, at the end of Incredibles 1, we just need a new villain to emerge to have a reason to have Incredibles 2. And so it doesn't really matter why he's there. It's just, he presents himself as he wants to take over the world, like, nothing is beneath me, but I'm always beneath you.
Right. But then he's just there to steal some cash. And it seemed like he was there to do more.
And get away with it. He is still free at the end of this entire movie, right?
It's true. He is. And he's kind of forgotten about, which I thought they were going to wrap something up at the end, but they didn't.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping to see him like reemerge at the end, but they really didn't do any, what's that, like, not foreshadow, but, where you drop a, he's not quite dead, sequel on the way.
Yeah, right. A little tease.
Yeah, unless maybe there's a tease at the very, very end, but I didn't watch.
Is there a post-credit scene? I don't know. I didn't watch it.
Oh man, we might have messed up here. If there is,
fine.
Somebody let us know.
We mess up all the time. But anyway, I thought it was interesting how as soon as, the action sequence ends and the cops all point guns at the Incredibles, even the baby, and they're like, freeze! And then they arrest the Incredibles. Then they have this little conversation in this interrogation room where the cops say that the Incredibles stopping the Underminer, or trying to stop the Underminer, were doing a bad thing. That they should have just let the Underminer do what he's going to do, and then insurance would take care of it. Which kind of makes me wonder, if you're saying that laws shouldn't be enforced, then why are there cops in this universe? If the only thing that should happen is that a crime gets committed and an insurance company is alerted, which would just, if insurance companies are going to handle everything, then insurance premiums are going to go through the roof. Because kind of the point of an insurance company is to like insure like a whole bunch of gold or something, like insure all your valuables, but then you just like sit them out on your lawn and like not protect them at all. Like, there's going to be no consequences if you come steal it. Then the insurance company would go, well, then I'm going to insure it for like an astronomical amount. You know what I'm saying, Daniel?
I do, but I don't really follow the analogy because this money is in a bank. There is security in place. There are police. There are defensive measures. They do lock the door. It's not like they don't lock the door.
Well, they lock the door, sure, but they're essentially saying that we're not going to do anything if it's stolen. We're not going to come after you.
It would have been better had the illegal superheroes not intervened and all this property damage resulted.
That's the argument from the police's standpoint.
Right. Which I disagree with them, because the Underminer had laid those charges and was going to sink the bank down anyway. So the amount of additional destruction from the Incredibles trying to stop him, how much more destruction was there?
Well, okay, so what they're saying, well, from my point of view, they're saying is that there should not be any kind of good Samaritanism. Like, if you see a crime in action, you should not ever try and stop it because you could do more harm, right?
Right.
So if there's ever, like, cops shouldn't chase people, right? Because you could do more harm.
I think you could make that argument. And our buddy at Liberty Weekly, Pat McFarlane, he's got an episode where he talks about how the police have no duty to protect you anyway. They have no duty to intervene. Even if there's a crime in progress, they don't have to come to the defense or aid of another.
Well, it's true. A court did decide that they didn't have any obligation to protect or to serve.
Right. And in many cases, when they do pursue, that's when innocent bystanders do get injured.
Correct.
And in cases, they're actually better off having not done that.
But this is all a pragmatic decision, right? This is all us crunching the numbers and saying is there more harm one way or the other. But would you say then that the Incredibles did an immoral thing trying to protect that bank's property?
Well, I mean, if you're Helen and it's illegal to be a superhero,
not for you. I'm talking you.
Well, I think that they were defending innocent bystanders in general. They were attempting to. Like, I don't know if they knew that the Underminer was going for the bank. It
I
was
don't
sort
know. Does it
of
matter?
killed.
The Underminer comes crashing out of the earth, damaging a whole bunch of property already with this
Right.
giant earth mover thing, smashing up a whole bunch of stuff. I think you can leap into action at that point. You're protecting a whole bunch of people's property at that point.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, they were defending people immediately.
Right.
So yeah, there's no moral issue there.
Okay. So it's just a pragmatic view of what do we do? Do we just let him take it and then insure it? Because he's stealing worthless banknotes anyway. He's stealing monopoly money. Who cares?
Well, I mean, if we're looking at what the cops are doing and they're saying, hey, it would have been better had you not intervened, because it's sort of like if you're getting robbed, they say, you know, give them the money because your money is worth more than your life, or worth your life is worth more than your money. You know what I mean?
Assuming they're only going to take your money.
Right. But it's like give in to the demands and then walk away. Save your plane and live to fight another day, like Top Gun speak. Now, I think that in this movie, the cops are playing that role of, hey, you guys shouldn't have done this, because they need to justify that, hey, supers are illegal, and we need to throw whatever we can at you to justify, you know, like that you shouldn't have done something. So we're going to just make up a bunch of shit.
But that if they're saying that you shouldn't fight crime, doesn't that invalidate their own position?
Well, they're saying it to the supers. They're not saying it for themselves. See, it's the rules are different.
Well, it's different. The rules are different for what costume you're wearing.
Yeah,
whether you're wearing a certain kind of clothing or not.
You expect these guys to be consistent, morally consistent?
No, I'm saying for us, we're evaluating them.
Right, and I'm saying that the reason they're doing this is to pile on and justify, that cognitive dissonance thing, to give reason or give weight to justify their decision. That, hey, these guys are illegal, therefore we have to come up with justifications for why what they did was bad.
Okay, so when a cop is chasing a felon or somebody who is suspected of committing a crime, like he's trying to stop him or catch that criminal, any damage that occurs is laid at the feet of the criminal, not the person trying to stop that criminal. So why are the Incredibles being blamed for this property damage and not the Underminer?
Well, in my theory, it's because they are trying to throw whatever they can at them to justify the emotional.
Right, but it's hypocritical.
Of course.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to establish that they're a pack of hypocrites. All right, they're a pack of flaming hypocrites.
Yeah.
Good. All right, established.
Yeah, and they're illegal because the politicians don't understand people who do good just to do good.
It's alien to them. It's true. Okay, so after that, they get arrested, then they get released because Dickers comes and whatever, they get released. But then now they're living in a hotel.
The motel.
Motel, you're right. It's a motel.
What the difference is, I don't really know.
And they're having dinner, and the Pars start talking about what happened. And Dad seems to be some sort of an anarchist type horrific person, some kind of libertarian weirdo, because he says that they didn't do anything wrong. And the kids are like, hey, wait a minute, did we do something wrong? Because it felt like we did something totally awesome there. And Dad's like, that's right, you didn't do anything wrong. But then the mom comes in and she says that, well, superheroes are legal and the law must be respected. And if you don't like it, there are laws that can in place to change bad laws. Otherwise, it's chaos. And the dad goes, but we do have chaos. That's what we have. Yeah. Sounds like the dad's sounds like one of us.
No, I would agree with that. And it's also reminds me of that wonderful argument that you'll often have with people when you advocate for stateless society. And they say, well, without a state, then warlords would take over or a new state would emerge. And I'm like, okay, so we're no worse off.
So that's what we have right now. So, oh no, a warlord like Putin or Bush or Obama might take over. Oh no. So mom's a tinkerer, but dad is very much like morality. We did the right thing. And she's like, but they decided that what we are is wrong somehow. I mean, I understand a lot of people make the argument very pragmatic about it in like, well, you're not supposed to do it because society has said blah, blah, blah. It's against the law, so don't do it. But we are much of the other argument where we don't care what some politician has scribbled down on some piece of paper. If it's right to do it, it's right to do it. If it's wrong to do it, it's wrong to do it. And it's nice to see that in this movie. And I didn't expect it, but it felt right to exist that there would be these two characters with these two different perspectives talking about this, because it is a world where their entire existence essentially is illegal.
Just for being who they are.
Right. Or at least, being who they are and then fighting crime on top of that. It seems strange that the cops wouldn't want them on their side, like hire them or something. But,
well, they were working in tandem with government in
the first movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is...
That kind of bothered me.
Right. No, I have much like them on their own, doing what they feel is right. So then let's see.
Well, before you move on, so let's go back to the Helen thing real quick. So she's basically saying you've got to advocate for changing the laws, in that whole like arena of ideas, like get a petition or run for office, join the mafia to change the mafia from the inside, that kind of argument. And
yeah, she's a tinkerer.
Yeah, she's a tinkerer. And also you mentioned pragmatic or practical, I think, because in a way I'm a bit practical in when a road pirate pulls me over, they are in the wrong, but they're not going to see it that way. So I'm not going to put up too much, like conversation.
Moral indignation. Right.
And definitely no physical resistance. Otherwise, they're going to go over the, they're going to overgo.
They're going to escalate.
They're going to escalate. They're going to step over the line big time. And I want to, get out of that situation.
And they're not there for some kind of moral debate. They're there to rob you. They don't care.
Right. Yeah. And they need to control that situation the entire time from beginning to end. So I'm practical in that sense. Like, yeah, I may be right, but I'm not going to. This is not the venue to have a debate, basically.
Right. You're outgunned at that point because they can always call in backup.
Yeah. And you're on their turf and they're not there to listen to you. Well,
right.
I take that back. They are there to listen to you in case you incriminate yourself.
Right. Indeed.
All right. Moving on.
So we meet the I don't know what you call it, like the philanthropist businessman guy and his sister.
The Howard Schultzian Slip and Jimmy Better Call Saul sort of free market capitalist guy.
Yeah, so he is a free market capitalist guy, and he likes superheroes. He loves them, and he wants to get them more favored in the public eye to change the law. And we learn about his backstory, and the backstory is that his father was already a wealthy guy, and he loved superheroes also, and he had 2 like phones in his house. And they went direct lines like bat phones to 2 other superheroes. But the superheroes get declared illegal. And there's a break-in at the house. And he goes to the phone and he calls on the superheroes. And, there's no answer or whatever. But it's that whole scenario seemed really unrealistic to me. Like, I get it. You would want to go call these superheroes, but then to have no other defense. So like they have a safe room and there's like a lantern, like, why didn't you just go to the safe room? Blah, blah, blah. Well, you could do both or have the phones in the safe room.
Hey, there's an idea.
Or, have a gun or I don't know, any number of things. It seemed like a plot device to give the villain some kind of motivation. I don't know. I didn't like it too much. Let's put it that way. What did you think of that, Daniel?
No, I agree. There's a lot of holes with that. But also the biggest glaring one is if it is going to motivate the villain, the evil endeavor, right? Why would she blame the supers on that when they were declared illegal? Why wouldn't she blame the government and the politicians for them not being in a position to be able to respond? Even though, just by the act of picking up the phone, even if they'd answered, he's still there with a guy's gun in his face. So
yeah, not nearly enough time for them to get there and react and whatever. And that's true of anything. Like even if he had called the cops or whatever, no one's getting there within a minute.
Yeah. I mean, when you need help immediately and help is, 15 minutes away or whatever.
Right. And so this inspires our villain to be, because we get a monologue later on talking about how everybody's becoming over reliant on superheroes, which is kind of a metaphor for being over reliant on cops and government. To me, it is, because she's saying it makes you lazy and weak to not, defend yourself, be your own, I guess, independent person, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I must sympathize with that a little bit.
And I sympathize with it, but okay, this is going to get complicated a little bit. But she's worried about people being overly reliant on things and therefore weakening your individual power, I guess you could say. And to an extent, I understand that. There's a real strong element in my own life to be like self-reliant and to have like a little vegetable garden and do everything yourself. But, being self-reliant is good, but division of labor is just better. And it's so much better for you to specialize in one thing and do it really, really well and get everybody else to pay you to do that thing really, really well. And then to just buy or farm out the responsibility for other aspects. So I don't really see the problem with the father farming out his defense to another person. He has focused on building this media empire or whatever it is he did, technology or communications or whatever. and he wasn't the best at being able to defend yourself. And yeah, it ended up biting him in the ass. It'd probably be a good idea to have a gun and to, I don't know, put bars on the doors or have a security system or have some dogs on the property or have a security guard or 2 or 3 on the property. I mean, he's rich, he can afford it. And he built a safe room. So I see the villain's point of view that, being independent and being self-sufficient is good. But I don't know, man, the division of labor it's allowed the world to become so much better and for so much wealth. It's built so much wealth, which is why the Ancom primitive people, the Anprivs, are anarcho-primitives who want to get rid of division of labor and everybody go back to, Pol Pot style, working the land, tilling the land. And it just makes no sense to me. Yeah, we're all self-sufficient. Great. We're all living in dirt. Fantastic. Because nobody is working on the computers and nobody's working on the refrigeration system and, specializing.
No, I'd agree. Yeah. And it is, it's really hard for me to understand the Evelyn Devers, Screenslaver's position because she's against selling things, right? She's sort of against money. She's very tech savvy. And so she advocates in her own division of labor, right? Being very specialized in a very specific area.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, you can't really expect people to be consistent, right? That's just not how humans tend to operate, I guess. Especially,
well, she's super not consistent because she's also against like screens, but she uses screens all the time throughout the entire movie. She's constantly watching a screen to check in on what her minions are doing and to see what Helen, or what's her name? Helen,
Elastigirl, yeah.
Yeah, Elastigirl's doing. Yeah. I mean, screens are doing good things, allowing them to do good things throughout the whole movie, but then she seems to be against them.
Well, she's using them to like watch Helen. She's watching Helen.
And using them to hypnotize people, by the way.
Yeah, and she's using them to do bad things, like, because she's basically, the pulling all the strings. She's orchestrating the whole thing behind the scenes here. But do you think Brad Bird was making comment to society in general, where everyone's got their cell phones, they're walking around, like cell phones at eye level, no one interacts with each other. Now it's just all through screens.
Yeah,
we're talking through a screen right now.
Right, for sure. Yeah. At one point, there's Screensaver's monologue while Helen's tracking him down to the pizza guy place, and it says something like, lay back and assume your interests are being served and your rights upheld so that the system can keep stealing from you, smiling all the while. And if you're talking about government, I think it's really on point. Lay back and assume that your interests are being served and your rights are upheld, which the government is actively infringing upon all the time, so that the system can keep stealing from you. Yes, taxation is theft. Smiling all the while. Politicians are constantly smiling all the time as they rob you. I think it's fantastic. But it's actually talking about, I don't know, what the system of TV screens? I'm not really sure what her point is.
Well, I think most people watching this would think that she's talking about capitalism or consumerism and corporatism, Business is distracting you and stealing from you, robbing you.
Robbing what from you? It's actively making your life better all the time, or else you wouldn't do it. I mean, TVs can be a bad thing. I agree. Like, they can send out bad programming to you and whatever. But it's also something that has brought a ton of joy and information to people where it wasn't available otherwise. It can allow you to multitask. You can get all kinds of entertainment and enjoyment into your home, where otherwise you would have had to go out and go to a play, which was usually really expensive. It only happened rarely. Is something, it was like relegated to the rich, where now everybody's got a flat screen. And that's not necessarily the greatest thing, but it's obviously a benefit of capitalism and wealth. Otherwise, you're going to watch a show like once a month, maybe. I don't know. I mean, maybe in your free time instead, you're going to read a book, which would have been better. But, people prefer it. Are you going to say something?
I'm not sure how to respond to that.
Are you on board with Screenslaver? Are you saying that? Do you think that she has a point there? The TVs are bad, screens are bad.
Well, I think they can be. I think people can get absorbed into things, but it's individual choice if that's what they want to do. I mean, it has made communicating far more effortless and being entertained on the go far more effortless. And it's also given the government more reason to intrude in your life, like in your car. Like, you can't use your phone in your car anymore. And I'm sure there's a higher prevalence of accidents as a result, but I think that there's free market solutions to that. We don't need to initiate violence to solve a problem like that.
It seemed like she was making a moral claim about technology, but it seems to me like technology is morally neutral. It's how you use it is what makes it immoral or immoral.
Absolutely. Yeah. Any tool can be used morally or immorally. It's just in inanimate object.
And it seems, it's strange that she would pick out screens because that seems to be the whipping boy du jour. But people are always complaining about the march of technology and how bad it is. I mean, there was a recent Tucker Carlson interview where he was bemoaning automated cars and how it would destroy the trucker people and how we would never get those jobs back and all those families would just starve because
just seen Logan or something.
Truckers couldn't do anything else ever. And it would just be the end of the world.
Yeah, Tucker's terrible on economics. He's almost as bad as Bernie Sanders.
It's really shocking. He should know better. I mean, Bernie should also know better, but the fact that Tucker actually talks to people that should know about economics, whereas I think Bernie is in some sort of weird socialism bubble. I don't know.
No, yeah, I'd agree. All right. So what did you think about I felt like another sort of societal current eventsy thing got thrown in here, and that was the male versus female situation with the Slip and Jimmy saying we need Helen to be the face of the campaign to get the public behind us instead of Mr. Incredible. And there was a little bit of this undercurrent of animosity between the two. Like they were in competition for, who's going to be who's the right person to be the face of this. And they were throwing out like, because the gender of each was like an issue. I don't know. It definitely felt like they were kind of throwing that in there. And I feel like they were pandering a bit with that.
There's definitely some girl power type stuff in there. And that was a bit annoying, especially when Helen was talking to the screenslaver girl, just like as a girl chat time. Like, you go, girl.
Manipulative. She's using that to like get her on team, feminist or whatever, and like buddy.
Sure. No, yeah, there was definitely some of that. Although I think they also have a bit of a point in that I probably would have picked Helen also if I were doing that exact same plan. Although I might have picked Frozone.
Well, he is pretty badass. He's probably my favorite character in this.
But yeah, Frozone's just a stud. He's probably the most powerful guy. I mean, he can just do anything for the most part, but he's also just badass. Anyway, I mean, if their goal is to, fight crime with as little property damage as possible, then you're going to pick a guy like Frozone who could just freeze everything and then have the ice just melt harmlessly, essentially. Or Helen, who is, pretty and doesn't smashy stuff too much.
And she's rubbery, right?
Right.
Yeah. Now, this whole thing sort of reminded me, because they do bring it up and then they sort of play with it a little bit. And then when Helen does decide to go and help these guys, Craig T. Nelson's character says, well, you go get us, legal again so that I can do it better. Right. Sort of a little tongue-in-cheek, like funny haha thing. And that reminded me of that old commercial, the Michael Jordan versus Mia Hamm. I think it's a Gatorade commercial maybe. And it's a song like, anything you can do, I can do better. I'll try to find a YouTube clip of it and torture our audience on the show notes page.
Yeah, I remember that. I don't remember exactly the Mia Hamm bit, but I remember that anything you can do, I can do better. I think that was like an ad campaign of some kind.
Yeah, and it was definitely like this boys doing something, then girls doing something, and like being competitive with each other. And this is way before all this like gender nonsense that's been going on these days. Because now, we talked about this, I think, on the last episode. Now there's transgendered people like competing in events that are intended for biological men or women. And they're like, because they are genetically different, hormonally different, all these things, they're just dominating in these events, right? And so it's like destroying the entire point of doing them.
Yeah, they're pretending as if it doesn't give them an advantage to have had, testosterone pumping through your body for X number of years. It actually absolutely does have an effect on your physiology. Why wouldn't it? But they just pretend like it doesn't. Because today, you identify as a woman. So before you get to, race against women. It's madness to me. But if it's a private organization, I don't care. If you want to open it up. I mean, they're all trophies. It's all made up anyway. I mean, I don't have a dog in the fight, but it is kind of insane to pretend like it doesn't have an advantage.
Right. Well,
because you do.
And play this out. Like, so let's say that you have a league and you decide to allow this to happen. Are the competitors that you have, are they going to continue to want to be in that league and compete in that way? Or are they going to go to a new league that's sprung up because there's an opportunity?
Well, do you, what you just said made me think of the Boy Scout, Girl Scout news. Did you hear about all this?
Yeah, that is crazy too. There's a thing called Girl Scouts.
Okay, there's a thing called Girl Scouts, but they, got angry at the Boy Scouts for not accepting girls. So the boys said, okay, you guys can come in and now we'll have just the Scouts. We'll just be the Scouts. Okay, fine. Now there's a section of the Scouts that is for girls only. So why didn't you just keep it with the Girl Scouts and then the boys could just be the Boy Scout? I don't understand. Why do you have to take over something and then exclude the boys?
Because they're never satisfied.
It's like, you can't have a thing. We're going to come in and we're going to take it over and then we're going to exclude you from your thing. Why don't you just have your own thing? It's hilarious. But anyway, yeah, so there would be a market response from that, right? From you having your own league and you had it your way, where you accept all the trans people and whatnot, and then another league where they wouldn't, and let the market decide.
Yeah, because I imagine that the league that would allow anyone to compete in that way would have fewer eyeballs, fewer tickets and fewer competitors actually wanting to participate in it.
I think it would definitely disincentivize biological women from competing against the non-biological women. Yeah, because you're at a disadvantage. You're at an inherent disadvantage. Maybe you want to put yourself up against that. Maybe you don't. Maybe you want to compete with the biological men. Go for it. I mean, it doesn't affect me in any way.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to watch it. I mean, I don't watch the WNBA either. So,
Well, neither does anybody else.
All right. Now, I know we're actually getting pretty long here already, but I know you wanted to talk about the dad being with the kids and having that role reversal where, he's usually out there being the crime fighter and the mom was taking care of the kids. But because they want to have that perception of this, cute girl who's less destructive out there, she's in that role. So now dad has to take this role with the kids, taking care of the family. And
yeah, and at that point, it felt like a TV episode, like a sitcom where dad was the stay-at-home dad now all of a sudden. And
pratfalls ensue.
Yeah, there's a lot of wacky stuff with the baby doing wacky stuff. It didn't really, that's where I think the movie kind of falls down a bit from me. But I didn't really quite understand Bob's character because he seemed to really take it as a hit to his pride that they chose Helen for this job, where he's like Mr. Incredible and my identity is super important to me and blah, blah, blah. But now I'm Mr. Stay-at-home dad guy. And I'm really bitter about my wife going out there and doing things. And I don't want her to succeed. But then I kind of do. But then I mostly don't. It seemed weird because wouldn't you want your family members to succeed? I mean, if you love somebody, you want them to good things to happen to them and to do well. But when she saves the train, he's pretending to be happy on the phone talking to her, but in reality he's turning on the phone and he's almost irate, losing his shit.
Well, because he wants it to be him, he's used to doing that. That's what he views his role to be. So I'm sure he's happy for her, but he's like, man, I'm missing out on doing this. So I could totally see him being conflicted, and I thought that was played up pretty well. And let's talk about that train a little bit when we finish your thought here.
Well, but isn't raising the children an equally important task? I understand, that's why the division of labor is so good. You've got one parent that is raising the kids. They're at home, not entirely, but a lot of the day. And then you got another parent that's out bringing home the bacon. And both roles work together to make a cohesive unit that succeeds. But now that this role is reversed, he's butthurt about it. I don't know. It's like he doesn't see the inherent value in what he's doing until later on. I guess that's his character arc. But it just seems unrealistic to me that he wouldn't inherently see the value in it immediately.
Well, it did just happen as well. I mean, it was just, events happen. And then it's 2 days later, Helen's out saving this hover train, which reminded me of the California train that they were building to nowhere. And I guess they shut that down now after wasting $14 billion. I don't know exactly how much money they threw down a hole and burned, but I guess they're not doing it anymore.
What are you talking about? I don't know anything you're saying.
The California bullet train, it was supposed to go from LA to San Francisco, and you could...
Is this the Elon Musk tunnel thing?
No, this was the state. The state.
So there was a boondoggle project in the government project, and it didn't work out?
multi-billion-dollar...
Color me shocked, sir.
Bullet train that would get you from LA to San Francisco in 2 hours or something like that. And they said it was going to cost $3 billion, and then it was $9 billion, and then it was $20 billion, and it hasn't been built. A bunch of the work had been done, but then they scrapped the thing. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, has said, we're putting this thing on hold or canceling it. This is all, a couple of weeks ago. So
the California's broke.
Oh, yeah, totally broke, even though it's the 7th or 8th largest economy in the world.
With the highest amount of poor people. It's the highest poverty rate and the highest risk. It's awesome. That place is a shit.
Highest regulations. Yeah, it's great fun. When I used to do some work for a nationwide company, and we would print things for them, and we had to have a California version and a rest of the country version because you had to have the font be a certain size on the California one.
That's awesome.
And it made it be extra pages.
Well, yeah, and isn't there, whenever you buy a product in California, it says like the state of California has determined that this may cause cancer or something that contains cancer-causing agents. I don't know. Do people just print that on all their packaging, no matter where they're selling it?
Everything. I rented a car there, and it's like on the glass in the car. It might as well just say California may give you cancer. And I think
they're not wrong.
I think it's spreading through Oregon and up to Washington now.
It is. Absolutely. It's spreading.
The cancer of more regulations, more taxes, more socialism.
It's on the East Coast too, big time. But anyway, we knew that.
Yep. All right. So people have more trust in monkeys throwing darts than Congress, which I thought was a fun line. But back to Bob raising the family a little bit. He helps Dash with his homework, and they're talking about this new mathematics. And I know that was a thing about Common Core, how they say, you do math differently. You have to think about it in like chunks or blocks or something. And like anyone who was in, school like 10 or more years ago will have no idea how any of this works. And I like Bob's comment where he's like, what do we change math? Math is math. What's going on here? What is this new math stuff? Why are they changing it? And secondly, it reminds me of Henry Hazlitt had a book that came out refuting everything in Keynes's general theory called The Failure of the New Economics. And unfortunately, it didn't get super popular because the general theory, which is hocus pocus bunkum, Keynesianism garbage, just stood basically popularly overtaking, like intellectual circles, and not because it won out in the argument, it went out in popularity.
Just like all politics, it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong; it's popularity contest.
Well, and Howard Schultzian says that when he says why the supers are illegal is Bob says it's because of ignorance, and Slip and Jimmy says no, it's because of perception. And he's right. It's how people are seeing them, how they're being viewed as,
Right, which is kind of a weird thing because this movie doesn't change that, I don't think. Like at what point do like the average person get to see, a superhero doing a great thing other than, I guess, Helen with the train? But at the end of the movie, yeah, they save the day kind of by not having this boat crash into the city directly. They kind of like sideswipe it into a road or whatever. But the general public doesn't get to see all the heroic stuff that the superheroes did.
Right. What they saw was the worldwide broadcast of them doing a bad thing.
Yeah. And then the boat crashing into the city. So how does the plot get resolved? It doesn't. It's just kind of like they show this superhero pose shot at the end of them standing on top of this boat. Like, yay, we did it. And then they arrest the screenslaver girl. But there's no real resolution to the actual theme of the movie, which is we're going to show the world that superheroes are great and that it shouldn't be illegal and that, everybody can help out and fight crime themselves and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. It seemed like an incomplete movie to me.
Well, it's not like you're wrong on that. They were doing a signing ceremony where they were making superheroes legal again. But then there's that broadcast where they're saying, we're tired of taking your shit and we're going to do bad things to you now, when they were under the screenslaver's control.
Right.
And that's out there, buddy. That's out there. That's been broadcast.
Yeah, with the wearing the weird goggles that are obviously screenslaver goggles, like they've never seen these superheroes ever wear that before. There's a throwaway line from the screenslaver lady is like, "Oh yeah, I updated them with new technology. They can like see heat seek and whatever, blah blah blah. Aren't they cool?" And the Howard Schultzian guy is like, "Yeah, okay, fine." And he buys it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
What else should we say? I don't know. I'm at a loss for words.
All right. So you're going to be Mr. Mediocre here.
Yeah, Mr. Mediocre. The action scenes are really cool for the most part, although I didn't understand how the whole baby thing, like they really focused in on this baby as being a big chunk of this movie. And then the baby just kind of accidentally saves the day for the most part. But there's one shot where the baby turns into a demon, and then Bob has to like give it cookies in order for it to turn out of a demon again. But then later on, when they're on the boat, the baby's a demon, and Violet just picks up the baby and is like, Jack, shoot your laser beam eyes. And he transforms out of being a demon baby. And I didn't understand how that was possible. Like the movie didn't set up that was the reason why, like she could just do that. So why didn't anybody just do that? Just like, stop being a demon baby. Okay. I don't know. It didn't make any sense. Am I making sense?
Again, you're not wrong. I mean, maybe it's now that they've made this connection with Jack and he's more aware of his powers and they can sort of communicate with, I mean, what is he, like not even a year old? But they figured out how to direct him to use his powers in a way that they desire. I don't know. But you're right. They definitely don't build to that. They do spend more time with him, like with the kids and things happening, I guess.
Yeah, well, I would say that this is a flawed movie. It's fun, but it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It seemed to be like half of a movie, and it was long enough. I mean, it was over like 2 hours, but it didn't seem to have a cohesive narrative. Like it seemed to have too many ideas stuffed into it for it to be a real cohesive kind of, this is the idea that we're going for in this movie. It seemed to be a bunch of things, and they're all like halfly resolved.
With exciting horn music.
Horn music?
Yeah, you know, the pow, zip, zang, zoom type music, like similar to the first movie.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Very brassy.
Right.
Yeah, I enjoyed the music in this. And actually in the credits, which I did watch some of, they do the superheroes songs that Slip and Jimmy had sung to them earlier. They actually do renditions of them with full instrumentation and everything in the credits.
No, that's fun.
The Frozone song and Elastigirl and Mr. Incredible.
That's fun. I did really like the train sequence where she was chasing after on the motorcycle bike.
Oh, my kids want that bike.
It was really badass. I really enjoyed the use of her powers. That's one thing these movies do really well, is having people with having their certain power set. And it's not like they forget how to use their powers later on in the movie. In a lot of movies like X-Men, there's in the X-Men Apocalypse movie, in the beginning of the movie, Apocalypse can just like decapitate people with sand. He's like a super telekinetic, and he can just have a couple grains of sand fly through your neck and then your head falls off. And then he never does it again ever in the rest of the movie. Well, in this movie, the characters know their powers, except for Jack, who seems to be a Swiss Army knife power, whatever is needed at the time. He seems to be a real lazy Mary Sue kind of a character. Like, well, we need Jack to be able to do this right now in order to beat the bad guys. Okay, he just does it naturally and he doesn't have to try hard and whatever. Kind of deflates any kind of tension. But every other character, it's a real, they have powers and they know how to use them to the best of their ability, and they try, and it doesn't feel like, you know, one character's holding back so in service of the plot, which I appreciate.
Yeah, and in the very first one, Violet is still learning her power and she doesn't trust it just yet. And so they did a really nice arc with that, with her saving her brother and her, or her whole family by the end in the very last moment, like without really trusting that her power could do it. But she eventually did. And she did it again in this one, but it was more old hat. You know, now she has the ability to do it. I do think they didn't use Dash very well in this one, though. They didn't use him very much. And when he was running around and whatever, it didn't look as fast as Speedy Gonzalez as he was in the first one. You know?
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not.
Like, there was
agree with you.
Effect. I think they did him differently in this one.
Yeah, they seem to do him. They slowed him down and barely used him. It's true. Maybe because he's too overpowered, so they just didn't use him. Because a really fast character can pretty much just solve everything like almost instantly. You could have, it's like with a Flash. I mean, in reality, his powers are he's so powerful that he could knock you out with just like swinging his arm, just from the concussion of the compressed air going by would knock you out. But he doesn't, because, you know, there has to be some sort of dramatic tension. Maybe they created a character that's just too powerful with Dash. I don't know. But let me talk about one thing that I really, really liked about this movie. And this is like a super cheeseball moment. And it might expose all the amount of soy in my body. I don't know. But there's the scene with Violet where she is confronting the boy that stood her up in the school next to the lockers. She is animated so well in that scene. I really like the facial expressions where she is showing a lot of vulnerability and awkwardness and anxiety and, you know, sadness and frustration. And I just want to give a shout out to the animators in that scene. It was really well done.
Well, it is Pixar. I mean, this is some top quality shit right here.
Yeah, I really liked what they did with Violet in this movie. It might have been a little bit on the nose and a little bit obvious, but I thought I really liked her character.
Well, that's good. Well, at least you have core beliefs, which is the thing that Helen says to the Evelyn Dever at the end, because she's a bit of a nihilist at the end there too, isn't she?
Devers?
Yeah, Evelyn Dever. She's very pragmatic, and I forget what she said.
Just because you saved me doesn't make you right? Is that what she says?
Yeah. And Helen's like, well, at least I have principles or core beliefs.
So Evelyn Dever didn't learn anything. She still thinks she's right. And she sees the Incredibles as the bad guys.
Oh, by the way, if you're going to fall out of an airplane at that altitude and speed, you're not going to make it. I'm sorry. I watched the documentary on D.B. Cooper, the guy who stole like $1 million on an airplane and then jumped out at like 30,000 feet from a from a jetliner. And they're like, yeah, at that altitude, you would get torn up.
Just
like,
by jumping out into the air?
Yeah, by jumping out of the air at that speed and at that altitude, like there's not enough oxygen, so you get asphyxia, and then something would happen to you where you'd basically get exploded.
Interesting.
I don't know the science on this. I'm just remembering a documentary I saw probably 25 years ago.
So this is take it with a big fat chunk of salt.
Like everything I say on
Okay.
this. I mean, it's like paying a price for a choice you never made, which I think Bob Parr says.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what he says to Violet.
Yeah. And I was like, I heard that and I'm like, oh, you mean like voting? All right. Well, I think that we should probably get some final comments in and then do our summary and review. So
I have no further comments. This was a mediocre cash grab movie that obviously grabbed a lot of cash. I don't think it was as originally, as inspired of a film as the original Incredibles, which I still hold as one of the best superhero movies of all time. This movie felt like a sequel. It didn't feel as inspired. The character motivation seemed fairly muddled, especially with the villain. It just didn't seem like a very focused film. So anyway, I'm going to give this middle of the road. I think kids might like this more than adults, but if you're an adult, you can probably still turn off your brain and still kind of enjoy a lot of the more action-y bits and some of the character moments. So I think this is a 5.
An even 5.
Even Steven, flip a coin.
All right. Wow. Okay. I think that my impression is going to be a little bit better. I was happy to see that they made a sequel, and apparently a lot of people did. I mean, $1.2 billion on a $200 million budget, six-bagger. It's surprising to me in a way because sure, it's Disney, sure, it's Pixar. I didn't think that the original Incredibles was like super popular. I thought it was more of the, lower on the ranking of popular Pixar movies. I figured that WALL-E would be way up there, and Up was a big deal, and Toy Story, the trilogy there.
They're making another one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's coming out like in May or June or something. But I didn't realize that this one had that big of a following. It remember when we did Blade Runner 2049, and it seemed like they were making a movie for the fans, and they were really expecting it to do well because they thought there was this hardcore, intense fan base that was just going to come out and see it. And it disappointed heavily at the box office, even though the movie was really well done. I mean, it was like a love letter to the fans of Blade Runner. And to contrast that with The Incredibles here, I don't think there's that like strong of a fan base for this, but maybe it has just a wider appeal, and maybe that's kind of that lowest common denominator kind of thing. Like,
I think you get the kids, you get the nostalgia from the first movie, the kids that watched it when they were growing up. You got like the 7 and 8 year olds that are now in their early 20s. They're going to watch it, and then you also got the huge superhero crowd. So yeah,
right. And superheroes it went through a long period of mediocre superhero movies. And then I guess in the last 5-10 years, they've gotten pretty decent. I guess Dark Knight, that trilogy sort of helped boost it back up. And then some of the Marvel stuff. Marvel's kind of been hit or miss. I mean, you're more the connoisseur of that realm. And I think we should do another couple of Marvel movies at some point. Like Civil War, I hear has plenty of good discussion points. Infinity War, supposed to have a bunch of good discussion points. Winter Soldier, yeah, all that stuff. Anyway,
all those things.
Talk about Incredibles 2 here. I did like the somewhat libertarian messaging in here. It seems like Brad Bird might be a bit woke in our respect. I didn't view the Screenslaver monologue or screed as the way that you did, but I'll go back and re-listen to it. And because you're right, I mean, what you told me, it does directly apply to if they were talking about government, it would be spot on. But I think that the intention was, have you seen Mr. Robot, that TV series?
No, I've heard good things, but I haven't watched it.
Yeah, we just started watching it. It seems really well done, but he's against money and corporations. And so it's sort of like how I envisioned the Screenslaver's screed to be, was meant to be against capitalism and against business and against money or caring about money.
Could I interject one question real quick?
Yeah.
If Mr. Robot's against money, what is his alternative solution?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
I watched the first episode last night, so I'll give you a more further report later on.
Just guns in everybody's faces all the time?
That is in the gold speech in Atlas Shrugged. That is the alternative, which is a great speech, by the way. The Dan Konya speech. I'll put a link to that on the show notes page at lastnighters.com/60, which, I'll just go with that. 6. A 6.0 is my rating, so a little bit higher than you. 6.0 for episode 60. So that's Incredibles 2, everyone. There you go.
One question about the movie, Daniel, before we wrap this up. Evelyn seemed to be wanting to live in a world without superheroes. I am very much of the opinion that I would love to live in a world with superheroes. They seem to be very specialized at doing one specific thing very, very well. Better than I ever could. Like, I couldn't fight, the Underminer, but the Incredibles could.
But he gets away.
Yeah, he gets away, but he would have kicked my ass and then some. He would have kicked the cop's ass and then some. At least the Incredibles put up a fight. They'd be far more successful than I ever was. And Frozone just dominates everybody. I mean, why would you want to see that and go, no thanks, get out of here, specialized people that are really good at doing things? No thanks.
Well,
would you want to live in a world where superheroes are real, Daniel?
I think we do live in a world where superheroes are real. There are people doing incredible, magnificent things every day, and our lives are far better off as a result of it. And it's all from the division of labor, like you were talking about earlier. Specialization and capital and elongation of the capital structure and satisfying consumers' wants and desires. There's things that weren't dreamed of 50 years ago that are commonplace today. So
it's true.
Miracles happening all the time.
We live better than the kings of hundreds of years ago. And I want people in a couple hundred years to look back at our times and go, what squalid poverty these people lived in. Because I want their lives to be so rich and wealthy. They can look back and go, oh my God, can you imagine? What a nightmare.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that, and we can end on this, I think Evelyn perhaps was saying that she didn't like the inequality of abilities. She wanted to make
I'm not as good as Mr. Incredible, so he shouldn't exist.
Because that was kind of a theme at the end of the first one, right? They wanted Dash to not show his abilities, to be...
Yes, to be Mr. Mediocre, get second place.
Mm-hmm. So maybe that carried through. I don't know. I'm sort of making shit up at this point, but that's what I do.
Me too, buddy.
Now, Robert, next week, I think we're going to do another episode, you and me. You really enjoyed that movie, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Is that correct?
You bet your bottom dollar.
Okay, and that's the Coen brothers, and it's out on Netflix. So if people want to check that out, it's 6 little Western vignette kind of stories, little encapsulated stories that are sort of the same genre, but they're completely distinct and separate from each other.
Yeah, I mean, they're all told in the same kind of tone, Coen brothers tone, but there's nothing relating from one story to the next, that's for sure. That I can tell.
Right, but you gave it super high praise, and so you said if I watched it and saw anything in it, perhaps we should do it, and I think there's plenty to talk about in there, so let's do that next week. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Sweet. I watched it just recently, and I can't wait to watch it again. So such a fun film. I mean, not that every vignette is, a laugh riot or anything. I wouldn't say there's anything that's really a laugh riot. It's just a quirkiness and a tone that you just don't get in other movies with the Coens that I really enjoy.
All right. Well, that's what we'll do for next week. So thank you guys for joining us for this episode. You can find the show notes and more at lastnighters.com/60. If you'd like to get some early access or pre-show and post-show, you can join us by supporting us on Patreon at lastnighters.com/Patreon. You can also find this on the Launchpad Media, where they're always launching new ideas in your direction. And I think that's it. So I will say good night from last night, everyone. Peace out.
In the early days of the internet, radical libertarians were scattered, lonely, and faceless. Without direction, they resigned to scour the web, sifting through content providers in a wasteland plagued by YouTube demonetization, Facebook jail, and covert internet censorship. But then, in 2017, the Libertarian Union was formed. Finally, the average Joe libertarian could find a thriving community of independent podcasters and content providers, all in one convenient location. At Libertarian Union, we'll always have the latest news, interviews, discussions, and even movie reviews. With hundreds of episodes and more added all the time, you'll always find something fresh at libertarianunion.com.